It's like she's learned exactly 0 lessons from the first book. Oh, who am I kidding? I know she's experienced 0 character growth and will continue to not grow through this. Hello and welcome to Quotation Points Video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books, discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of The Looking Glass Illusion by Sara Ella. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. I am a little worried about jumping into the second book without rereading the first one, since a couple of reviews warned that it gets a little confusing in this one, but we'll see how it goes, I guess. Let me see if I can remember enough to do a quick recap. In a dystopian future where the UK has been dissolved, the concept known as imagination has been completely outlawed. This is because there was a gene discovered called the Wonder gene, which struck fear into the hearts of many. These so-called wonders were put on a list and literally branded. Alice Little is a 17-year-old girl who has been struggling with her identity. She's obsessed with the title Wonderland Trials, but thinks that she's simply an ordinary girl. Her life is turned upside down when her older sister Charlotte disappears. Against all odds, Alice finds herself being escorted to Wonderland by a boy she knows named Chess. There she must participate in the Wonderland Trials, but the deeper into the game she gets, the less that she understands what is actually going on. On top of her sister showing up again, she uncovers a huge plot that's been going on for decades. Charlotte is deeply embedded in an organization set to overthrow the Red Queen, an activity that they would have likely accomplished if they would stop stabbing each other in the back every 5 minutes. However, as the story wraps up, it's decided that this isn't even the real Wonderland, but a place in between the real world and the actual Wonderland. The first book left off with Alice about to go face down the Jabberwock, a mythical creature that is said to be your worst foe brought to life. Our story begins. The book opens up with something called the 8th Square. It's barely half a page in length, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it. It almost seems like a teaser of what's to come, of Alice being with a queen who is mocking her and Alice deciding to be brave. Since there's something of real value to be gained from this, let's move on. Part 1, which is titled Square 1, The Pawn. Guess we're actually playing chess in this book. Chapter 1. We pick up where we last left off with Chess staring at Alice's retreating figure in the forest. Yes, for some unholy reason we're doing point of view switches in this book. You want to know what would have solved that? Writing in third person. Anyway, there's an awful lot of navel-gazing with little actual plot. I could probably condense this entire thing down to a few short sentences. Maybe I will. Chess chases after Alice after a bit of internal moping, none of which I understand. Well, that I'm intentionally ignoring, mainly because I still stand by my original statement that it felt like the Alice-Chess romance had been shoved in at the last possible second. I'm not here for him being a whiny brat about mysterious things full of mystery. I don't care. Stop wasting everybody's time. The two of them end up on a grassy chess field. The entire thing is a metaphor, which the author bashes the readers upside the head with. I'm not kidding about that. We're literal pawns in the Queen's last game. Chess is obviously upset that this seems to be to play his namesake game, and goes so far as to explain to the readers that the game of chess literally drove his father to madness. In the game of chess, a pawn can only move forward 1 square until the opportune moment, 2 squares if it's the first move, until another step forward until that pawn is ready for the kill. Like I said, the author beats us around the head with the metaphor to make sure that we really understand what she's talking about. Chapter 2. And we're back over to Alice's point of view. I cannot begin to tell you how thrilled I am to read a switching point of view story. Not. Alice steps out into the massive chess field. Once there, she kind of stands around and contemplates the mysteries of the universe, as it were. This goes on without any real point for way too long, especially when you consider that there's almost no dialogue. She and Chess exchange some words, but they're also kind of insignificant. She attempts to take a step forward, only to find her way blocked by an invisible wall. This leads to more navel-gazing. Finally, Charlotte appears, except that she's like a child. Since Chess is on the other side of the chessboard field, she apparently can no longer communicate with him, despite the fact that they were yelling at each other not even a page earlier. But this is so that she can continue her conversation with what she's pretty sure is an illusion only she can see. Anyway, Charlotte tells her that she must reach the 8th square, that in order to do it, you must walk forward and then stop when you get there. Which strikes me as the author again trying to emulate Lewis Carroll, but falling immensely short of any of the wit and charm Carroll possessed. Charlotte also won't stop calling her Catherine, which is confusing to Alice. Charlotte disappears at the same time as the rest of Team Heart shows up, except that they're all on different squares and can seemingly only move forward, not side to side. Then the narration pauses to physically describe each and every one of them. As if this wasn't terrible enough, we have to time out to do this. Alice now decides that the best course of action is to read up on chess, so she pulls out the giant book she's apparently been lugging around this entire time and flips to a section of the game. Yes, it's an old game and also quite complex, but you know what? I'm tired of chess being used as a metaphor. Where are my books that revolve around Go? Oh, what am I saying? That would require actual thought from the author instead of scraping the bottom of the fresh idea barrel. Anyway, she starts reading this really long section about the rules of chess, which is kind of odd to me considering the fact that there's only 7 people, and I'm not even sure that there's anybody sitting on the other side of the board. Everything else hasn't been as it seems, so why did she think that it's going to be like any game of chess that she's ever played before? It's like she's learned exactly 0 lessons from the first book. Oh, who am I kidding? I know she's experienced 0 character growth and will continue to not grow through this. Ellis had started reading in the hopes that the book would talk strategy. Instead, it gives us this bad metaphor story in which a king was approached by a man and asked if he wanted to play a new game, which is obviously chess. The king agreed, but he apparently never had the rules explained to him. He only played with the king piece and lost within seconds. In the most writing ever, the mini-story goes on to say that the kingdom that this nameless king ruled over was taken over by an invading country not long after this game. It couldn't have been more obvious if the author had whacked us upside the head with a chair. Allison decides to ask for help in deciding what to do. Chess decides that she's the main character and that she has to decide, so she orders everybody forward. Forward, I decide and nod at the trees. We're all pawns. I take the first step and the others follow suit. Unlike in a traditional game of chess, we can all move at once. What other rules will be different? Again, literally everything before this wasn't as she'd expected, so why does she think that this game of chess is somehow going to be any different? The line of trees appears and Alice knows that they're going to be alone again, which, enough with the chess metaphors! This isn't even chess at this point! Chapter 3. For all this dreadful walking, one might have mentioned when supper starts. Girl, you are literally in a challenge in which people have entered and disappeared from, and you're thinking about supper? Are you a hobbit? Alice finds herself back in the woods. She thinks that they're the same woods she entered at the end of the first book, but then she kind of begins to doubt herself since the trees are all gnarled and black and scary. She wanders around lost for way too much page time before the orphanage where she and Charlotte lived shows up. She tries to get into the orphanage's garden, but the doorknob stops her. In true Alice in Wonderland fashion, the doorknob talks. It asks if she's got a key, so she shows him a key that Chess had given her sometime in the first book. Then she proceeds to start arguing with the freaking talking doorknob. It's not cute, it's not amusing, it takes up way too much time. Eventually, the doorknob tells her that the gate is a shortcut to the third square. She's on the second right now, which is named Pond Wood. That he can't simply let anybody pass through since he has to protect the king. Alice eagerly asks if he's protecting the Ivory King, to which he agrees, but also says that the Ivory King isn't a who, but a what. Alice wants to keep questioning the doorknob, but then thinks of something. Chess comes to mind again, always asking and never doing Alice. You know it's bad when even the book has enough self-awareness to comment on how little plot movement that there is. However, I often find that books that have enough self-awareness to comment but not actually to fix the problem in the first place are worse than the books that lack all and any awareness at all. Breaking in would be a small feat, especially considering this house is most likely an illusion to begin with. It's what a common thief would do, and a common thief is who I once was. Baby girl, no you weren't. You were a teenager who thought that she was badass, but you snuck around to play card games. Card games. You were literally playing Go Fish and Old Maid. She then looks around for a while and randomly decides that she could break in. A ladder appears against the wall, so she tries to climb it. Her foot slips on the first rung, but when she puts her weight onto the second, it breaks and she falls a little. Even more randomly is her decision that this is cheating. Alice proceeds to wind up the clock music box she's been wearing around her neck this entire time. Apparently. Anyway, as soon as the music starts playing, the doorknob wakes up from a nap, declares that this is the key, and opens. Inside the orphanage, the entire place is in serious disrepair. She goes upstairs to the room she and Charlotte once shared, where she finds a looking glass. In it, she sees a teenage Charlotte, so she steps through. On the other side, she finds an unknown teenage girl's bedroom and 2 girls. They call her Catherine and invite her to sit with them on the bed. Alice turns to go back through the looking glass only to find that the portal has since closed. What's more is that the girl in the mirror is no longer Alice, but a teenage Catherine. The other girls are named for the readers, Cordelia and Charlotte, Cordelia being the current Queen of England. However, Alice questions why her, Charlotte, would be around the same age as Cordelia and Catherine, and eventually halfway reaches the decision that it must be Scarlet, not her sister. However, the narration never actually tells us as much and continues to refer to her as Charlotte. The girls are talking about who would become queen next, that the current queen is going to name one of them as their heir later that day. The three of them make a promise that no matter who is named, that the other two will support the next queen, no matter what. Cordelia then proposes that they play a game. Alice agrees since she thinks that it would help her to understand what's going on here. Charlotte, however, is reluctant, which makes Cordelia call her Shirley. The nickname jolts Alice out from her confusion and reminds her that this probably isn't real. The three girls then proceed to start up a game of tag. They leave the bedroom and start racing down the halls of what Alice can only assume is Buckingham Palace. Team Hurt is staying at the Wonder version of it, but there are some key differences, mainly the actual wonder. Alice finds herself lost yet again, but mercifully her wanderings only last for about a paragraph before she hears a crash and ends up in the kitchen. There, a 6-year-old Alice looks up at herself and calls her Mummy. Our point of view, Alice looks down at her hands and finds that they've aged a bit from her teenage self. Little Alice tells her that she's trying to make an unbirthday cake for Auntie Charlotte because Charlotte had been so sad recently. Point of view, Alice hugs her daughter, and this awakens in her memories of her own mother doing the same thing, and it makes point of view Alice want to cry, mainly because she's always longed for Charlotte to comfort her like this, but she remained physically distant at all times. Alice remains there, holding her younger self until little Alice disappears. She finds herself alone in the same woods once again. Chapter 4. We're back over to Chess, who claims that his father came to him in a hallucination. You're a sad excuse for a son, he jeers in my mind. Can't even learn strategy for a simple game of chess. I should have never named you after it. I'm not even sorry about this, but what kind of Mormon nonsense is this? Don't give them any more ideas or else somebody will name their kid Hopscotchina. Anyway, in case you couldn't tell by that passage, but Thomas Shire wears an insanely verbally abusive father. In a lot of ways, Chess wishes that he'd punched him instead because there would be a physical mark. The narration never goes so far, but it hints at the idea of getting public sympathy for a black eye. Instead, he holds all of these emotional wounds from the nonsense his dad flung at him. He also holds onto a lot of guilt because he spent so much time protecting Kit from their father's abuse, but failed to protect Kit when it really mattered. And that, my friends, is called survivor's guilt. Chess wanders through the woods for a moment before he comes across Kit, but he almost instantly knows that this is an illusion and not actually his brother, which already puts him ahead of Alice in the intelligence department. But to be fair, the bar is literally on the ground with that. The sight of his brother leads Chess to another memory of when 12-year-old Kit made an exact replica of Big Ben in the middle of Wonderland. At the same time, Chess chided Kit over the entire thing, claiming that people didn't need the boring, normal nonsense of London and Wonderland. They wanted literal wonder. Kit told his brother that he was about ready to join Team Spade. Chess argues that his own brother was literally 12, that the trials were no place for a literal child, that Chess's own training for the trial had changed him in unimaginable ways, that he wanted to protect his little brother from undergoing the same sort of horrors, which is completely fair, but that everybody else around them pushed Kit to enter, so he had. Chess proceeds to wander around lost for about half a page before he comes across three figures: the Lord of Clubs, the Duchess of Diamonds, and the Minister of Spades. Chess asks if it's not illegal for them to interfere with the trial, but the Minister insists that none of the spades have made it in, but that doesn't explain the Lord or the Duchess. However, he's also quick to realize that all of this is another illusion. The minister goes on to talk about how he was the one who put Chess on Team Heart, which is yet another thing Chess feels guilty about. He was supposed to get Alice for the minister because Charlotte is his daughter, and also Alice is Catherine's daughter. I'm not exactly seeing his big picture here, but sure. Chess asked the minister what would happen then, that his wayward daughter would surely return home, a place that I'd like to remind everybody that she left of her own free will a decade earlier. The Duchess, Madame Savain, says that they're looking to end Scarlet's overly long reign, that the other three kingdoms want to do away with the monarchy completely and to let each section to rule themselves while working together for the common good, which is one of those things that sounds way too good in Chess's opinion. Chess asks why it is that the three of them simply couldn't overthrow Scarlet, since it would be 3 against 1. They say a lot of words, but what it boils down to is politics. That you can't exactly avoid a war if you want to go in and behead the current queen. Okay, so the book doesn't say that, but it might as well. I've read enough political fantasy novels to know how this goes. It's at this point that Chess realizes that this isn't an illusion, but some sort of holographic communication. He looks to his Wonder Vision and thinks that they must have hacked it in order to talk to him like this. He pointedly tells them that Alice made it to the 4th trial and Charlotte even came back to Wonderland. What more do they want from him? But it's obviously not good enough. They're of the opinion that Catherine left clues on how to finish the 4th trial, and they need Chess to help Alice uncover them so that the trial can be won. Chess is like, Alice isn't here. That's not how this trial is set up. They then get angry with him and tell him to go find her. As if telling Chess all of this wasn't enough, Dina then shows up in the conversation. The book is kind of vague about what it is that she's waving about, but I assume that it's some kind of anti-Wonderland or poison that takes away people's wonder powers. She threatens to poison Alice because they all know that he's in love with her. Now, see, this is where you're supposed to call them out on their bluff, because right now they need Alice a hell of a lot more than they need Chess. Yes, he might get punished, but they wouldn't hurt Alice. They literally said all of this to Chess not even a page earlier. This is so stupid. Instead, Chess thinks about how Alice said that he didn't trust Dinah, and how he should have listened to her because she was right. And wasn't it Dina who threw Charlotte under the bus in the first book? Yeah, down with Dina. Anyway, this entire time, Chess has been struggling with his Wonder Vision and finally manages to get it off of his wrist. This ends the communication, and he thinks that from here on out, he won't be overcome with further illusions. He also thinks that it's creepy that Scarlet has been collecting all of this information off of them, even going so far as to watch their dreams. And I have to make an aside saying, who out there has coherent dreams? I once had a dream where I had to climb on top of high school gym lockers and army crawl after a man in the Chick-fil-A cow costume. That's how they're going to help Scarlet to torture me during the trials. Chess must have chucked the Wonder Vision into the woods, but decides to hang on to it in case he needs it later. As he continues on, he hears a train whistle and decides to find and take it. Thanks for listening to my Book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. Newly added to Patreon is to become a member without paying. You'll get access to the same thing as Tumblr, but on Patreon. Supporters can have access to so many more book Snarks starting at $1 a month. Also new is a 1-week free Patreon trial, so be sure to check that out. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just $10 per chapter. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of spicy short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, so if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!